start, and I'll just give you a little rundown on the chapel and what this is all about. 3 years ago, I had read an article in the Janesville Gazette. I grew up in Janesville, went to the schools and graduated at Parker in '69. When I was growing up, I lived about 3 blocks from the chapel, and I'd ride my bike up there as a kid and sled down the hills. And the article I had written in the Gazette was the city owned it in 2008. It was given to them. They had to take it when the Cemetery Association, a company that owned it, failed to make payments, so the city has to take it. So they were given to it, which, you know, they have no idea how to run a cemetery, but they had to take it, and the chapel was really in really bad condition. And they thought the best thing for them to do, a landmark like that, was to tear it down. And it was built to last for centuries. And they had actually even wrote a book. They had hired an architect and wrote a 4-page option book of different steps how to fix it. And the last step, option 4, was to tear it down. But, and they would have. We went before the council, a group of us, and wanted to try and save it first, to try and save it. And they gave us 5 months and told us come back with $40,000 and we'll talk again. And in 5 months, we started a group and raised money and had raffles and fundraisers all over town for 5 months. And 2 days before the council meeting, we had $40,050. And we went back and we were able to save it. And the next step was to restore it. The city figured it would take $400,000 to fix it. And we had our $40,000, and the city kicked in $60,000, so we had $100,000 to work with. And 3 years later today, it's totally pretty much all restored. I'm working on the windows right now, and we plan on a grand opening, and we still got $50,000 left. Because of all the local businesses came together, and the citizens, and they've donated and brought in their workers and roofing companies and gave us deals, and it's been a great community venture. And it's really the city of Janesville, the people, that have saved this chapel. We just directed it. So it's been a great project. This window here, like maybe, see, there's 3, 4, this is the 4th window out of 44 windows. That was a missing design. Through the years, the vandals were up there breaking them out with stones and rocks and bricks and shooting them out. And especially this one here, the biggest, they damaged it and then they threw it away. And nobody really knows what it looked like, the original design. I did research and found that back in 1899 when they built the chapel, they used, and the people that built it was the Knights of Pythias, a fraternal group that stood for 3 things back east, and they moved to Janesville. They were from the New York area, and a lot of different clubs they had all over the country. Back then, over 500,000 strong. Now there's only about 75,000, but they're still in practice. And they stood for 3 things: friendship, charity, and benevolence. And I used one of those 2 designs to incorporate into my design, taking all the other designs in the chapel and drew it into that one, and then used the same color glass. And you'll be using the glass that was computer matched to the other windows for that window. It'll be all new glass, and you'll be cutting that glass. So I wanted to involve the city school system in this project, and they've been involved in art contest in the past 2 for fundraisers. And to get all 3 middle schools, I thought would be really a good thing for future. You know, thought of you guys going up there and using it when I'm gone, and the group. And we're pretty much all retired, the people that are in this group. So it's the next generation that will be taking care of it. And it is saved now. We're very close to restoring it. Out of 44 windows, I have 32 done. I still got 12 to go, including that one. But they're moving right along. So what we're going to do is practice cutting glass. Clear glass is the easiest. City Glass, I went and talked to them yesterday, and they provided all the clear glass for this project, which would probably have cost $90 just for the scrap. Well, to them, I think they probably cut up sheets to get all these pieces. Some of them are 8 by 8, 10 by 10, so it really isn't scrap. They're all about the same. 1/8 inch clear glass matches up to stained glass. Stained glass is 1/8 inch. So this is the easiest. We'll draw designs or straight lines. I'll show you how to use the different cutters. There's 2 different types of cutters, the pliers, all the little tricks, and it's real easy to do. So I'll pass the tools around, and then I'll show you how to use them. And you can kind of take your choice, try different ones. This is the pistol. You can hold it. Some people have trouble holding the pencil. This is the pencil cutter. You have to hold this pretty much upright, straight upright. Otherwise it bottoms out if it's too low like this. This one is always upright. The way you grab it, it's always straight up. A lot of older people like this because they can grab it harder than this one. And I prefer this one, but it's your choice, you know. Try them both. I should have 15 of each, so you can try either one you want. Tool is a very important tool. This is called a running pliers. After you score with your glass cutter, it'll create a line, and you'll see the line on the surface of the glass. If you turn it upside down, you'll see it too. This tool right here can do straight lines and a light curve of a break. So after you score the glass, then you would line the line of this tool up with that score, and I'll walk you through that, actually show you how to do that. And you just squeeze lightly. The jaw is curved, so it puts even pressure on each side of that line, snaps it just like butter. It's very easy to use. It's a very important tool. It makes it really easy.
What's it called? Does it have a name?
A running pliers.
Running pliers.
And the screw is always up. Some of the marks on the top are wore off or they weren't there or whatever, but the big screw is always up. So the angle of the pliers itself are down right to left. What we're going to be cutting are the 2 rings. I can show you here, and I've already laid them out on the stained glass, the color glass. Would be this ring here, which is blue. It's a light blue water glass. And then this one here, which is a golden color. And both glass is pretty easy to cut, pretty easy. Some glass I'll be using, and here is a Tiffany reproduction, and it's difficult to cut it. Some of it I even have to cut on a bandsaw because it's so expensive you can't waste it. And some of it in the past I was building a custom window for somebody, and it was reproduction Tiffany glass, about $80 a square foot. And about every piece I broke, so I started cutting it on my bandsaw. You can't waste that kind of glass.
Are different colors different difficulties to cut? Or
It is, well,
how's that go?
reproduction, see, they hand roll it.
Okay.
And they cool it a little bit different, and that is harder, and it's rougher.
Okay.
So usually the smooth, transparent, which is just the solid color but clear, or wispy, those are the easiest to cut.
So it's the process that they make the glass, not
Right,
the color.
right. And the brooms, everybody's got a broom. Why you have the broom in the board, of course, is cutting the glass. You get little chips and flakes off of it. Don't ever wipe it with your hand. That little pieces you can't even see will cut you. And that's what the broom is, to sweep it in the corner as you're cutting. you know, when you're practicing. And always keep a clean board, because a chip, a little piece under the piece you're cutting will crack it that quick. So you always just, after you cut a couple, sweep it into the corner, and then when it gets full, we'll dump it in the trash. It's a good way to keep it all together. And if you want to come around here, I'll show you cutting the glass. I'll use your ruler. We'll do some lines here. Usually with stained glass, you cut the smoothest side. It's difficult if it's bumpy or it's got a granite texture on the back, so the smoothest you try and pick out. Some glass, clear, of course, it's smooth on both sides, but some it's kind of hard to tell, but you know, it's smooth on both sides, so it really don't matter. But you try and get the best side where you have less dips and grooves where this little cutter, see, will slip into. So I'll just do some. You could, you know, when you're cutting, I usually try and keep it away the line, or if I'm laying out a design on the glass, keep it at least 1/8 or 1/4 inch away from the edge, because it's hard to break that off. So I'll just do some straight lines first. And when you're cutting, it's always edge to edge. You can't cut a square out of a piece of glass, you know, like this here. You can't cut it from here to here and stop, and then cut it from there to there. It'll split every time right there and come straight across and ruin the rest of the glass. What you have to do is cut it in a series of cuts. Cut that off, come in a little bit closer, cut that out, and break it out, and as you go. One of the tools that we use in class, and we don't have here, of course, is the glass grinder. And you can get, you know, if you need this piece here, say this whole piece with this cut in there like that, you can cut these pieces out in a series of cuts, break them out, and maybe even come in a little bit closer and break that out. You just have to be careful with these two corners. They like to break off. So you always tap underneath the glass, and that will help score the line. And we'll get into that too. So what's left here of this little corner, that area right there, you can take up to the glass grinder and grind that out. And then the way you foil that with your foil and solder it, it'll look just like a square. So you don't even have to cut it perfectly, because the way you do the next steps, it will look just like a square. Okay, like this, and then we'll do a curve.
So a lot of these kids have practice with metals cutting, and we do the corners, so it's not like the metals corners, so all the little pivot doesn't work here, correct?
No, yeah, it's, those corners really like to break off, and then you gotta recut the piece, you know, if it's part of the detail, and usually it is, so. But, you know, there's a series in tapping. That's one of the reasons I like this one, this cutter better. You can use it, it's just a little awkward, you know, that nut on there, for tapping underneath. Okay. And I can kind of show you. The way I do it and the way that you choose to cut glass is really up to you. That is the most comfortable. I like using both hands. For one, I can make the glass stay put. You know, sometimes it likes sliding around, and then I can guide where I want the cutter to go by using both hands. And it's always edge to edge. You try and get it right on that very edge. It likes slipping off backwards. You know, if you can't get it right on, you can come in about 1/8 of an inch or so, and then just press down. It's spring-loaded there. So you press down on it, and you'll hear the sound of it scoring. And just follow the center of that line. Now you could use a ruler, but that should come later. And that's how you score it. So then you take this and you can hold that up, and you can see that score line, maybe the line that that cutter made, and you heard it, so you know it's there. So then you take these, line it up, the screw always up on top, and you can come all the way in or just come in 1/4 inch, so the line is lined up to the score line, and lightly squeeze. If you really got to squeeze then something, then it isn't scored, because I barely even grabbed it. And like I say, clear glass is one of the easiest, so it shouldn't take much. To do this, the same thing, it's always edge to edge. You can't stop in the middle. And you shouldn't, if you don't hear the score line when you first do it and can't see it, you could go over it. But if there is a line there, you shouldn't go over it twice. Eventually you'll ruin the cutter. It's a one-time thing. And just press hard, you know, so you can hear that. I'll press really light here, and clear is pretty soft. See, I'm pressing really soft. But we seeing it there, that one you can see without the line there, the black line. That's pretty dark here. Just line it up here, screw up. The curve, the same thing, edge to edge always. Middle of the line. And if you get off, you know, it's not a big deal, because your next step, when you grind it, you'll grind it right to the line. All the lines on the pattern, each piece that you cut out, will be bigger than that area, because when you take the piece of plastic to draw your pattern, lay it on the color you choose and draw around it, that design will grow about 1/8 of an inch, and that gives you enough to grind that down on all four sides or whatever to fit inside the lines of your piece. You have to see the black line all the way around, because that is your lead line. It can't be over. So same thing now. You could, and the problem with these are these points here. They like to break off. If it's a sharper point, they'll always break. So the thing to do is to tap it, grab both pieces, and just tap underneath, and you'll watch it crack. It's already cracked by tapping it underneath. See that? You can see the edge of that where it's cracked. You should grab both pieces. It'll drop off there. See, there it is. It's already running. You always tap on the bottom. It don't take much. And the sound too will get tinny and then solid when it's ready to go. See that? It cracked. You can see that crack on the bottom side underneath all along that line. So it's ready to break off. See, now it sounded different. So you know it's ready to come off. Right there. So tapping is really important, especially you got sharp points there, because if you try and use that, and sometimes you can, you know, clear glass is easy, but sometimes it won't break off there, but if you don't tap it, it usually does break, and then you got to recut it. Okay, let's do, we won't be really doing anything this much of a curve, but I'll show you how to do this. And you should do that in a series of cuts, because again, those corners like breaking. So to do that, you would get most of it out of there. I go straight across, edge to edge, right to there. So you can see that score line. Take these. You got a straight line. These are great for a straight line and a little bit of a curve. They'll work as long as you can get enough glass on both sides. Sometimes you can cheat, you know, and get maybe half on there or even 1/4 of it. You can try it if it's not all on there, and sometimes it works. But this is fully on there. Break that out of there. And then you can come in again. And again, you got to do it in a couple more cuts. Those corners are critical. And split it in half, maybe, and get a little bit more out of there, see? and then I tap it. See, it's already cracking. And then you can do it again, or, you know, you can grind that out with a new grinder bit or a pretty good bit on the water grinder. You can grind that out like butter. If, you know, a lot of times you're not sure if you can get that close, you don't want to break it and have to cut it again until you get really into it. So you could leave it and just grind it out, grind it right to the line. But if you want to get closer, you can come right up to it, and then we'll use the other tool. And cut it right on the line, just like that. You can tap it. Sometimes that'll work. Again, those corners. Or we'll get the other tool. I'll show you how that works. This one. This is for side cuts, little pieces that you can't get, you know, all of the glass on there. So you can tap it, you can see where it's already cracked underneath, and then you can come in. I like using the point. You kind of come here and just, and I break it off like this, a downward. And you can kind of hear it crack. See, it's ready to come out, just like that. That's hardly any grinding there. When you take this, the grinder, you grind it for a half a minute and it's good to go. Otherwise, to grind that out might take 10 minutes. So it's just time consuming, that's all. But it takes time to get the hang of it, to cut it close without chipping it or breaking the corners, you know, and that comes in time. Practice, practice. So
You take the smaller pieces out, like, I would have just gone zip and then popped it off. And then, is it because of the angle and all the rest of it?
the point's here that if you use these and try and pop it out, chances are you'll break the corners.
Okay, so you just gotta keep getting closer by,
Right.
okay.
Yep. Sometimes you can get away if you tap and see it run underneath and then use these. Sometimes it'll work without breaking the corners.
Right.
Not too often.
Okay.
Then you end up cutting a new one. So there's chips there, see, and then that's why you have the brush. And you want to, and just reaching down to pick that glass up, you can't see the little chips. And if you touch that chip, it'll cut you that quick. Not to scare you, but glass is sharp. Handling it isn't a problem. It's like a razor blade. You can pick it up. But if you run your finger along the edge, on any edge, that will cut. But just picking it up usually isn't a problem. There is some textured glass that is heavy texture on the back side, it's smooth on the front, called crinkle or crystal ice. And when you score that, the top edge is nice and square, but that bottom edge, it has that jagged roughness of that texture. And just picking that up will cut you, because you can pick it up and see that back edge, just a ragged edge. So you really got to be careful. We don't have that here, but that is kind of dangerous glass because you can't see it, you know, until you pick it up, and so you have to be careful. So like that one there, pretty curve. Again, this point here would, if you use just those, you're going to break that point. So you're going to have to tap it. And like I say, this does work. It's just awkward for me. I always use that tool. See, it's already cracked. You want to hold both pieces. You don't want that big piece to drop off by not holding it. Hit the table, it could fly back up. So you always hold it. See, it sounds different. You hear that change. So you guys can practice. I'll hand out glass and go to town, draw some lines, straight lines, and you know, I'll help each one of you and see how you do. Also too, another thing, cutting glass, I would suggest standing up. There's not too many steps of this art that I can actually do sitting down. So you need to kind of stand up, look over what you're doing. You can put more pressure down if you need to with those cutters. The pistol, of course, you could probably do that sitting down, but by standing, you're away from the glass in case it does fly up, and you can see better if you're standing. You can draw lines, straight lines, you can do a slight curve. I would suggest do some straight lines first with the ruler and try that out, and then use the running pliers and just squeeze those handles lightly and you'll see the results. And just cut up the whole piece. Either way too, that's something I didn't say. You could go toward you or away from you. It's up to you. I work away from myself, but if you feel better at that, you do it the other way, that's fine. You want to hear the score and follow that line as close as possible. Right in the center if you can. That's a good sound. That sound to my ears. I love that sound. So you can put the middle of that arrow right on that line of your score line and then just squeeze lightly. There you go. show everybody this. When you're cutting, you know, even a straight line, the way that it breaks off of the other piece may not be square, and that's why you grind it with the glass grinder. It's water cooled. It grinds it pretty quickly and it'll square up that edge. So the next step, when you put a piece of foil on that, I should have brought a piece, how you attach. What I'm doing with the chapel, it's lead came. It's a different technique. But when I teach it, it's like a 1/4 inch wide piece of copper foil, they call it, and you peel the backing off of it and it's sticky. And after you grind all your pieces and they all fit in between the lines and you can see the lines of your project, whether it's a little bird or a square or something, a triangle, then you center that piece of 1/4 inch foil, sticky, onto the edge of that glass, even on both sides, and wrap the whole piece of glass and fold it over. And that, by grinding the glass, it squares it, it cleans it, and it's easy to foil. And once you foil every piece of your design, 4 or 5 pieces, 2 pieces, it creates that metal edge, and that's how you solder it or weld it together. Because of that metal, the foil is the only thing that holds it together with the solder. It don't stick to glass, but it sticks to foil. And that's how you weld it together. So the grinding is a very important thing. Even if it don't come out straight like that, it's not a problem. When you go to your grinder, the next step, you will grind it straight and square it up. And then you can grind each piece to fit within that opening. And it'll fit just like the picture. So a lot of students, they'll cut all their pieces, lay it on their pattern, and think, wow, this don't fit. It's way oversized. It's off the lines everywhere. But that should be that way because when you grind it, you will grind it to fit. It'll fit just like the design when you're done and give you room to foil it. So the grinding is what really brings it together. So even if you cut off the line and just starting out, that happens real easy. It takes a little bit of time to follow that line to get the well use of that tool, and that's not an issue because you can grind it to the line. This is your color. This is light blue water glass. It comes in about every color you can think of. It's a transparent, but it's got a light tint of blue, and it's got a ripple, so they call it water glass. I use it a lot in backgrounds of a sailboat or whatever, where you need water, and it's the perfect glass for that. What's that? There's some big scraps on my board down there. Over there?
Well, stand where you are.
Oh, yeah. If anybody's running out of pieces to cut, I have more. Wow, that was a tricky cut there.
Yeah.
Very good. And this here, you could cut straight across and break that out, and then it would be easier maybe to get that. But you can try either way, try and see how that works, and just like you're doing. It's all about experimenting too to see what you can get away with, and you remember that next time when you cut, you know, if it broke on you or if you should tap more or cut it different. You cut yourself?
Yeah, can I please get a bandage?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's little specks. I mean, you can't even see them sometimes.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
And to do a circle in glass, you do that in a series of cuts. It's hard to do it in one.
I attempted.
Very good, yeah, and you did that probably in a series of cuts. Cut the most of it on the outside in a series, and then you can get closer and closer, and then grind it round. So what do you think? Easy, hard?
Pretty easy. Pretty easy.
And
I made a puzzle and I'm trying to put it back together.
the options of colors and textures and jewels and bevels, and I mean, it's just endless what you can do. It pretty much all lines up. You pick the color, you pick your design or draw your own, and I mean, it's an awesome hobby or business. And I hope you continue or come and take a class at Kids in College or a private class or whatever and stay with it because it's a lot of fun. And you could even make money on the side doing it. You know, have a little booth at a show or something, or who don't like getting a stained glass sun catcher as a gift? You know, a lot of my students, they just make gifts for people. They give it away. And yeah, they can't get enough of it. It's pretty easy, I mean, pretty inexpensive to get into, to buy a grinder. I do have a complete kit. You even get maybe 4 or 5 square feet of glass with it. You get all the tools we're using, plus the glass grinder. Pretty much everything you need to get going and build something. And soldering iron, solder, everything, foil. And I think that whole kit with the grinder, that's probably the most expensive, is about $300. But you would have enough glass to build 2 or 3 little windows or sun catchers or whatever, and the tools last forever. The glass is the water glass is probably about $6 a square foot. 12 inch by 12 inch, that's a square foot. And that's about $6. Clear glass, what we're using, that's about $3.50 per square foot. It's amazingly high for just clear. So for a few bucks more, you can get stained glass. And that water glass comes in every color you can think of. There must be hundreds, maybe thousands of colors and textures out there.
Isn't there mirror glass that you can mix stained glass?
Yep, mirror glass. I even have some. I have red mirror, and still it's reflective. You can see yourself in it, and blue and green and purple.
Yeah, because I know I have some in one of my projects that I made.
Yep. And in class at UROC, I try and have a good selection of glass. You probably have one side to cut and 2 ends. And some of the pieces have have a dividing line, so there are actually two. So you have to split them in half. There's only 4, I think, that like that. Okay, and then this one. Okay.
Do you want them to come up and grab a piece, or?
Yeah, as I cut these off, you can just grab it and then take it over and put the number next to your name, and then take it back to your table and cut the ends or cut it in half or whatever it needs to be. There's one. So you'll cut the ends where the lines are there, and then cut as close to this line as you can. Individually, you can bring it over to this pattern. I'll take a picture of you carefully holding it where it goes. This part in here, this is hand painted, lettered, with glass ink, and then you fire it in a kiln at 1200 degrees and it melts the lettering onto the glass so it's there forever. Otherwise it could peel off. And these here, this is blue glass. It's a lot like the water glass, but it doesn't have the texture of the water ripple. It's just a clear glass. And it's called flash glass. And when you sandblast it, the color, like this one, blue, the letter that you sandblast will turn white. And it's like etched glass. So it'll stand out. That F will be white in color with a blue background. And the 3 letters, friendship, charity, and benevolence. And then this here is a shield of a knight, the face part of a knight that will be outlined in gold, and that'll be fired on too.